It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. Yeah.
Hello, and welcome to In Progress with Grace. I'm your host, Grace Davis, and today we have a really interesting conversation. I got together with my dear friend, Kennedy Nicole, who is a somatics mentor, and we talked all about the importance of somatics for your personal life and overall well-being. Wow, that's hard to say. And we talked about how important it is to practice somatics to have a safe place to fall apart, and how it affects your business as well as your personal life. So I'm very excited to share this episode with you today. Kennedy is a close friend of mine and someone who actually really greatly supported me in the building of my mastermind program, The Radiant Presence. She was on the back end. She was on all of my live events. She honestly held so much of the backbone and supported me in so many ways in creating this program. So I am forever grateful to her, and just so excited to have her on the podcast to share her expertise with you guys as well. It has been such a joy to see her kind of build her own business along with me, and to see her really find her calling, her direction, and to go with that and to see it flourish. So she is such a sweetheart, and I am so excited for you guys to meet her in today's episode. Before we dive in, I want to do a little check-in with you guys. This is my second ever episode of the podcast. Yay! And I am feeling really excited about what's to come. Editing this episode definitely gave me a new layer of excitement and confidence. That's the word. Confidence about what I'm doing here. Because I think for anybody, it's so easy to listen to ourselves talk, to watch ourselves back in a video and nitpick every little thing. And this episode was so easy for me to edit because I just let a lot of that go, and I just listened as if I was a third party, someone who's never heard my voice before. But it really reminded me of how much we can be such harsh critics of ourselves, and how that perfectionism can come in and take hold. I'm listening back to the podcast and I'm I'm saying way too much, but at the end of the day, most people aren't going to notice that. And if they do notice that, there's still so much value to gain from what's being shared in today's episode. So you guys are witnessing practice right now of letting the perfectionism go, putting things out there, trusting that it will find the people that it needs to find. And I trust that if you are watching today's episode, you are finding it for a reason. And I hope it's valuable for you. If you do feel there's moments while you're listening where you get a little aha, or something really resonates, or you're wow, I've never heard that before, I would love to hear from you in the comments below what really stood out to you, what really supported you, what really initiated something in you, because I love hearing from you guys, and it also helps me understand what topics, what themes, what kind of things do you guys need support with? What kind of things do you want to hear from the podcast? So please feel free to speak your truth and your voice in the comments below. And we are going to have new episodes coming out every single Friday, which is definitely a bit of a stretch for me to do. It's definitely an edge, but I'm really excited about it because a lot of what Kennedy and I talk about in this episode is commitment and devotion and showing up even when the motivation isn't there, but doing it to build self-trust. And so that's what this podcast feels like for me. I've felt called to do this for so many years, and I let my perfectionism really hold me back. And so now I'm just practicing putting it out there and staying consistent with it. So you guys can look out for new episodes every Friday. I am in Hawaii, so the timing, like, it might end up being Saturday for you, if depending on your time zone. But just know, around Friday, Saturday, you can look for new episodes. And I've got some other really exciting interviews coming up. This particular interview with Kennedy was filmed a few months ago, before I got injured. If you guys don't know, if you don't follow me on social media, I've been healing a foot injury. It's like a very severe sprain. I've been not able to walk for 5 weeks, so that's had a bit of a impact on my mental, physical, and emotional health. But hopefully I only have 1 more week to go of healing, and then I'll be walking again. And overall, I'm really grateful that this time has provided me with so much spaciousness to reflect, reconnect with myself, to move certain emotions through my body as well. Like, it's given me a lot of time to rest and reflect, which has allowed the space and time for certain emotions to surface. And I'm directly seeing how that is impacting my business. Like, having this amount of time to where, like, I'm not going out to events, I'm not going out and, like, doing things so much, there's less distraction. I've really had the opportunity to look more inward and to feel, and to then gain clarity. And because of that, I am finding more clarity in my direction, like how I want to move forward, how I want to show up in this space within my business. And this podcast is a huge part of that, of like what came through that clarity. Like, okay, just go for the thing that I've wanted to do for so long. So thank you for being here. It means so much to me. And yeah, is there anything else? Let's see. We did a little check-in. New episodes. That's it. We're good to go. All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoy today's episode, and I'll talk to you soon.
So, Kennedy, I am very curious to hear from your perspective, what got you into this type of work? Like, what led you into the place where you started to work with somatics, and specifically, like, in the online space?
Great question. I was introduced to somatic healing when I was in college. I had familiarity with traditional forms of therapy, but I'd never really been in therapy before, and I was really in a mindset space. I was learning a lot about New Age spirituality, mindset, manifestation, and the mindset element really fascinated me, but it wasn't translating. I was thinking the right thoughts, and I was like trying to feel the right feelings, and I still was feeling really anxious and dissociated. And when I was introduced to somatic therapy, I got a new lens for relating to life and to my body, and that really inspired me. Just a new way of experiencing the world. So when I was 18, I started sharing online. Mostly friends were following my page at that point. When I look back at the things I was sharing at that point, I'm like, this is so cringy and cute of me that I posted that. I'm like, these graphics look horrible.
We gotta start somewhere.
We gotta start somewhere.
Yeah.
And in order for the evolution to occur, you really have to just post something and record the first thing and do it for the first time. Yeah. So I started sharing online then, and my first client I had when I was in college, and she would come to my house every week. So I started working with people in person, and I actually really didn't want to move into an online space. I felt resistant to bringing the complexity of trauma healing through the body to a Zoom call or to
social media,
sharing about it on Instagram. I really was like, how can you get a feel for this work through a screen? And sometimes even now I wonder, I'm writing my landing pages and I'm sharing my stories and I'm doing all the things, and I'm like, how can I explain in words what is a felt experience in the body? It's so different when you're sitting next to someone and you can facilitate something or listen in real time than it is online. So I had a lot of resistance to posting work online, to doing online programs, to sharing on social media, but I love to travel. And when I was 19, I moved to Hawaii alone. And I was like, okay, but I love the work that I'm doing. I've just started. So it was brand new. It was hardly like I was even doing the work yet.
Yeah.
In an entrepreneurial sense. And so I had a few months of time where I wasn't posting. I wasn't really sharing any new offerings because I was trying to reconcile the part of me that's like, I want to do this work in person. It's powerful in person. And the part of me now that knows that there is also so much power in being able to connect with people that we don't physically share space with.
Right.
So that was kind of my process of bringing this work online. There were a lot of growing pains to bringing something
For sure.
really body-based to a screen, but now it's so rewarding, and I'm so grateful that I chose to do that, working with my online clients and people who I've never met in the physical and I might never meet in the physical, who I'm getting to share this work with and then have tangible change in their lives from it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so powerful. And I love how you were speaking to, you know, that discomfort and that disconnect of like, how do I bring something that is so connected to the body and the physical experience and also like very energetic too, right? How do you even bring that into the online space? Because I think a lot of healers, a lot of people doing somatic work struggle with that same question, you know? And of course, like being able to do that work in person is preferred, right? If you can.
Absolutely.
But I think it's also powerful to have the ability to impact someone's life when they're in a different country or like across, you know, on a different island or somewhere across the ocean,
yeah.
you know, where they maybe wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with somebody like that, you know? And it's different, right? Would you say that the way that you hold space in your online containers is different than how you hold space in your in-person containers?
For sure. I've only held a couple in-person spaces over the last couple of years, which is when more of my work has actually been coming online. Well,
Yeah.
coming online in the literal sense and coming online in terms of my own creativity and my own expertise. But it is different in person because there's an increased element of artistry. I feel like we can access when we can sit down or stand up or dance around or do whatever together. There is a different element of artistry and there's a different level of safety I feel like I can create to hold someone in person. Because when I'm on a Zoom call with someone, they're safe with me, but I can't always guarantee that their environment is going to be safe, especially doing this nature of work where a lot of people are maybe experiencing challenging household dynamics or relational dynamics. And it's different to be in a physical space with someone and have them know that where they are is separate from the environment where their trauma might be taking place.
Right.
So that is a big difference, but because a lot of my work is online now and I am having, you know, the clients that I'm working with online do have powerful breakthroughs, I know that it's not required for me to be in person in order to facilitate a safe space.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting you bring that up. It makes so much sense how, you know, when you're getting on a Zoom call, that person may be in the same house as their abuser.
Absolutely.
Or like, you know, where the trauma is happening. So they're not going to feel comfortable to like make the big sounds and the movements and the things to move the energy as much as they might in a separate environment. You mentioned that you do see people have breakthroughs even online. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
I would love to. There's, I think, a really beautiful element to someone knowing that they have somebody in their back pocket who's on their side.
Yeah.
Because even when we meet with someone in person, let's say I go to either traditional therapy once a week or I go to somatic therapy or like a sister circle or ecstatic dance or something.
Right.
That is a place where I can go and have an embodied experience, but it's not the only place that I have access to embodiment. When I'm by myself, when I need someone throughout the week, I don't have to wait until my next in-person therapy appointment. I don't need to wait until I see those people again. my clients knowing that they can get on their phone and we can have a process through the body in real time, I've seen even that be super powerful. People just being really grateful that there's a space where you don't have to wait for the next call. You don't have to wait for the next time you sit across from your therapist in a traditional sense, and you can experience a relief or a release or a reconnection to your body in real time is really powerful. And I'd say some other breakthrough that I see happen a lot is releasing things that you didn't know were even there or needed to be released. A lot of the time when we start moving the body somatically or doing even really simple things, like just if we just sat here and like in silence tapped on our hearts for like excuse me, for like 5 minutes, I would probably cry.
Yeah.
Like something in that just unlocks some sort of charge. I may not know what it's about. I may not know why it's happening and I don't need to, but the body has something to release. And so bringing that to clients, and you know, if you're stomping or you're shaking or you're dancing and you start to feel something shift, and after you're like, I didn't even know there was anything to be moved.
Right.
Like that's crazy to know you can access that energetic and physical shift in any moment.
Right. And I love what you mentioned about having the space in between sessions to be able to have that transformation. That's something I really do appreciate so much about being able to have access to certain healing modalities and support in the online space. There's a lot more people who are offering containers where you can send voice messages like as things come up in between sessions. And personally for me, that has been such a game changer, because oftentimes, like, you know, I'll go to therapy or I'll go to see my coach and I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know what to talk about because I'm not triggered right now and I'm not going through it right now. It doesn't feel like there's anything to move. And of course, there's always progress that can be made. Like you said, you don't have to always, like, there's things in there you don't know are there. And when you just start to move into that space, you can let things go you didn't know were there. That's such a game changer for somebody who's actively in an abusive situation or a traumatic situation, and like things might happen in the day-to-day that they just need someone to talk to about it, or they just need someone to know what's going on. And it's really powerful to be able to provide that space. I see that even in my community, you know, it's very business related, right? But in the mastermind, like, we also look at and consider the emotional aspects of running a business, like the emotional ups and downs. Like, I have clients who reach out to me and they're like, I'm really struggling to like believe in myself right now, you know? And that being able to provide that support in between sessions makes such a difference for someone's growth. Like, it really catalyzes. And I think you can do even so much more in those kinds of containers than you might be able to do in person in a traditional sense.
For sure. I think also having that access to communication between sessions, whether from a business standpoint or just an emotional and life standpoint, is it helps break up the pattern of survival mechanisms or survival mode. When you know that you have someone, you know, let's use business for an example, there's confidence things that come up, there's insecurities that come up, or frustration for feeling like you're putting a lot of energy into something and maybe not seeing something back. I know, you know, you work with a lot of people who feel all the things because as business owners, it is also a personal development journey.
100%.
And when you have someone to coach you through it, when you have someone who is on the other end of the phone, even if it's a text or a voice note, it helps to break up some of that feeling of like, I'm all alone. I need to make this work. This is my only option. I need to figure all these pieces out. And when you're like, okay, I'm going to send this message. I'm going to take care of myself. I know there's someone who can help me see the bigger picture or provides, you know, a word of confidence, a word of affirmation to me right now. It helps alleviate some of those feelings of like franticness and panic that come with big emotions.
Definitely. Like you said, just knowing you have someone in your corner, like a support system, someone you can look up to or even celebrate life with. That's like a huge thing for me that's been helpful throughout my life and my career. Just having someone to say, hey, I showed up and I did the thing and I'm proud of myself, you know? We can be really harsh critics on ourselves, right? Or like, even with somatics, like I'm not doing enough, or I'm not healed enough, I'm not there yet, and being hard on our progress. But when we have someone in our corner to remind us or to celebrate with us, it feels like you actually are making progress.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're alone in it, it's like, is anything happening, right?
Yeah, it's like hard to see where we were and where we are, but when there's someone to reflect that back, it can feel a lot more reassuring.
Definitely, yeah. And it's like, it's not about looking for someone who has all the answers or has it all figured out or knows exactly what they're talking about. So often, it's just about finding someone you connect with and having a friend in your corner, really.
Yeah.
I believe like coaching is so much about just supporting people in where they're at by reflecting and asking questions and allowing them to come to their own conclusions and giving them like the tools to do that, right?
Yeah, I think that's something really beautiful to remember as, entrepreneurs or healers or instructors of any kind, is that we aren't a savior for anyone else, which is beautiful on two fronts. One being, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to know exactly what I'm doing. It doesn't mean just because I support other people in their trauma healing journey doesn't mean I still don't get triggered or I don't have big emotions. And I don't need to not have those things because I'm not here to save anybody else. And also beautiful on the second front, which is that other people are allowed to stay in integrity with their own journey, and it doesn't need to look exactly like mine.
Right.
So your clients, their businesses aren't going to look exactly like yours because that's not their calling. That's not their texture of expertise.
Right.
And the people who I support, their healing journey, their passions, their emotional body isn't going to look exactly like mine. And that's amazing because it's not supposed to, which is relieving for the person receiving our support and relieving for us
For
giving
us
support
as well. Definitely takes that pressure off. When I first started coaching, I put so much pressure on myself to be farther along than I was, and I thought like I had to reach a certain milestone before I was like qualified or worthy enough to let's start that process, And then I realized I can serve a younger version of myself, and I don't have to be farther ahead than I am, because where I am right now is going to be such a powerful reflection for someone who is in a position like how I was 5 years ago. And of course, it's going to look different for everyone. But I'm curious if for you, because you're a younger entrepreneur, like you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
I'm in my 20s. And that was something that held me back for a long time. Like, I'm not old enough. I haven't had enough experience. I don't know what I'm doing enough. Has that come up for you?
Absolutely. I still have this somewhat frequently, I would say, just because a lot of my peers in the industry that I'm in and a lot of my friends who are also business owners are older than me. I was speaking about this with someone the other day, and this is kind of an interesting perspective to be bringing into this conversation right now, but what she said to me was, would a man say that? Because I had said, sometimes I feel insecure because I'm so young and I have a ton of training in my work. I have a ton of lived experience of my work, and I've worked with a lot of people. I've, supported a lot of different situations, but I still worry when I show up online sometimes, are people not going to take me seriously because I'm so young? And she asked me, would a man say that? She said, my prior partner for the last 10 years has been supporting marriages and helping people transition out of divorce. He's never been married. He's never been divorced. He's in his 20s. And she's like, how does he have this knowledge? Like, where did he get that knowledge? He hasn't lived that journey.
Right.
But he has never, she told me, she was like, he's never said to me, oh, I wonder if people won't take me seriously because I'm young. And that was really interesting for me to hear, just bringing in a new perspective of, oh, how am I conditioning myself to believe that because I'm young and I'm female, it means maybe people will think I'm silly. Or maybe people will think I'm just like, la la la, I do whatever I want. Because sometimes that's what I worry people see when they see me online. At least looking at when I look at my older content from when I first started my business, I'm like, oh God, is is the way I'm perceiving myself right now the way people were perceiving me? And it's okay if they were.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say I experience that somewhat frequently, feeling maybe strange because of my age, but when I think of the people that I'm able to support at this standpoint and the other young people who are able to relate to me in a unique way because we're the same age,
Yeah.
and it's kind of easier to talk about your healing process with someone who's your age than sometimes someone who's 5, 10, 15 years older. That brings more assurance of, okay, I am called to this work, I am qualified, and I know that I am making a difference with the people who feel called to me in return.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, that's so beautiful. It's such a process, I think, just in so many aspects, just affirming that we are qualified to do the work that we do. Like, and that's something I see holds a lot of people back. You know, they have a lot of skills. They even have, you know, even if you just have lived experience, a lot of times that is enough for you to be able to help somebody with a transformation. Um, but so many people hold themselves back because they're thinking, I have to get certified as a coach. I have to get certified in this and that and that and that and that. And I'm not qualified until I have this many certifications and I've gone back to school and I've had this many hours of free, you know, coaching that I give to people. And it's just not true. It's great if you want to continue to educate yourself. Please do that. Like, we're always learning and growing, and we love, you know, learning and growing. It's so important. We never should stop. But don't hold yourself back because you think you've got to have X, Y, and Z in order before you can start changing people's lives. And I always try to come at that from like a service perspective, you know, and that's what actually I had to go through major work within myself to get to the place where I could launch my mastermind, because I was asking myself all these questions and I thought, well, maybe I need to do this, 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 and this. And I asked myself, like, do I believe that I can be of service to somebody with the experience I have now? Well, yeah, because I've already done it. Okay. So if I hold myself back waiting to get this certification, that certification before I start, how am I actually being of service to my community? I'm not. Right? Like, the more that we hold ourselves back, sometimes you got to put it in the perspective less about you and more about the people you're serving. You know, if I don't bring my gifts into the world, if I don't show up, if I don't put myself out there, people aren't going to get the help that they need. And that little reframe gave me enough strength to actually start the program. And hey, since the very first day we launched it, we've been seeing people having huge breakthroughs, just feeling more solid in their businesses, in their marketing plans, in their offers, and in their confidence around what they're building.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that you brought up the service standpoint, because something that I was just thinking was, at what point is it a disservice for me to go and check all the things off the list instead of showing my face and coming out and providing my work or sharing my offerings? At what point am I kind of distracting myself or keeping myself hidden when I know deep down I actually can serve people right now?
Right.
I do think there's value to periods of stepping back and taking the time to grow or address what needs addressed, whether on the back end or the back end in a logistical sense or in that emotional, intellectual, embodied sense.
Yeah.
And we do have cycles and seasons where we might be a little less on the forefront, or we might be doing a new training or gathering new skills or taking those opportunities as they come where it's really aligned. And that is different than just telling ourselves, I need to have this done, this done, this, and I need this certification, I need to watch this video, I need this training before I can actually help people.
I definitely agree with that completely. And I think it's just a matter of discerning between, am I allowing this to hold me back based off of fear? Like, where is the decision being made from? And that really takes, you know, getting familiar with your body, like somatically, even being able to like notice, where there's tightness in certain areas and what's lingering and what might be holding you back. But I completely agree. We have cycles and seasons, and I talk about this a lot in my work, because there might be a cycle in your business where you are going all in on Instagram, you're posting every single day, you're very, very consistent, you're showing up and putting in the work, right? And then you might enter an era where actually you need to put that energy into like creating automations and systems in the back end of your business. And so you transition into more of a state of maintenance for the social media marketing side while you focus on the back end of things, right? And it's natural. It's natural to do that if you're going through grief, if you're going through change, if you're going through a move, if you're going through, growing a human in your body for the first time ever and becoming a mom, right? Like, that's the thing I love so much about owning my own business. I get the flexibility to say when and where I put my attention. And I feel so grateful, to have that ability, because so many people don't. And of course, there's times in your business where you actually don't really have a say.
Yeah.
And you're like, I gotta make money, I gotta pay the bills. So like, I've got to put my attention here. But I think there's even like lesson in that too. We can't always just rely on doing things when we feel like it or when it's convenient.
It's true.
But we
So
do
true.
need to have that discernment on when it is time to take a step back on certain things to put that energy elsewhere. And I think that's honestly a really important skill set as an entrepreneur, to develop that discernment and know when to put your energy where.
The discernment, and then also the discipline to do it.
Right.
Because sometimes there's that part of us that's just like, no, I want to do it my way. It may be time to take a break from Instagram, but from posting on Instagram and moving into maintaining that. But if I do that, what if I don't sign as many clients, or what if my visibility goes down? So I notice in myself, sometimes I stay in the season I'm in maybe a little longer than I'm being told to stay there to protect something, when I know that I could be directing my energy towards something that's actually going to be more effective right now.
For sure. And from an energetic standpoint, what do you think that does for your business, right? Like when we hear that message of like, it's time to put your energy elsewhere, and then we're trying to hold on to something, it creates a level of scarcity around our business, around our finances, around everything, where like we're not trusting that if we put our energy here, the leads will still come. From a logistical perspective, because we can say, oh, I trust the leads are coming all day, every day, but there is also it's like a mathematical equation, right? Like you can't just like drop off the face of the planet and expect to like continue to make money. So huge part of what we focus on in the mastermind, as you know, is like building systems. And so the goal is to put energy in a particular area for a period of time, create a system that's going to continue to work for you even when you step away. So as you build systems, you can step away, and those things are established and working for you. That's the goal, really, I think, with online business, and why it can be so powerful. Because when you're just working in person, you've got to still maintain certain things. Like if you have a workspace, you've got to like keep the lights on, you've got to like meet people in your community, you've got to network, you've really got to put more energy out to make more impact, I think. Of course, it depends on the area and what your service is, right? Like if you have a necessity and need for people, it's going to be really a lot easier for people to find you and all that. But that's what really fascinated me about the online business. Like you, I love to travel and I love to have the flexibility to go anywhere. You can sort of do that with in-person things through like real estate and like owning businesses, but it takes so much capital to even get to that place. So with an online business, you put in a lot of time and energy on the front end, but I think the reward on the back end is massive.
Yeah. Even like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go
Even
for it.
what you were saying about the flexibility of deciding where I'm going to show up and put my energy each day in my own business, and how there are periods of time where it doesn't feel like we have that choice because we need to show up and the bills need paid and we do need to be really disciplined in showing up in certain ways. Even that has flexibility on the back end, because when we're in that season of maybe a few months or years or however long it looks of, we were talking about this the other day, keeping your head down and just grinding, those seasons of really getting the work done, it may feel restricting in the moment, but the flexibility that we'll have when we're able to step back from that season is way more than if we were working for someone else or, let's say waiting tables and putting in all those hours. There's not that flexibility of recurring income or consistent systems when I step away from my in-person side work
Offerings,
or in-person work.
Right. That totally makes sense. This sort of brings up a conversation around kind of switching over into more of the somatic lens, storing grief in the body. And like, I just went through an experience recently where I was faced with a lot of grief in my life, and I was in a growing stage of my business. So I really didn't have the ability to stop everything and just feel that grief and process it and let myself be in that feeling.
The first thing coming up is nothing our body does is bad. There's no right or wrong in the body. It's just whatever she's gonna do. And there is a deep protection mechanism. Even think of children who experience trauma. They have to go to school still. They sometimes our bodies, when we experience trauma at a really young age, aren't even developed enough. Our nervous system is still growing in certain ways, and we don't even consciously know how to process, or that we're compartmentalizing. So even from a young age, compartmentalization is super natural, and we can be more aware of it as we grow up. But sometimes we have to sacrifice a sense of feeling in one area to ensure safety in another.
Right.
Which is why when you are going through that grief, it's like, I can't feel this all right now. The body's kind of, maybe sometimes it feels like it's pushing back. Like, I want to feel it. It's heavy. I want to cry.
But then you
chest
can't.
hurts. But then you can't.
Yeah.
Because in the intellectual parent mind, I need to provide for myself before I can feel safe to fall apart.
Yeah.
So we build containers to fall apart in. And that's something I teach my clients hardcore. It sounds silly, but it's like, how do we safely fall apart?
Yeah.
How do we actually intentionally craft an environment before we go through trauma? We could even do it preventatively. Or I call this like a process.
Yeah.
We can set up a system so that when the next time we're triggered, or the next time we're moving through a weird relational thing, the next time we have something weird come up financially, we have a process that you don't even need to consciously think about. You look at the process that you've laid out for yourself and you see, this is the container that I've already set the structure for. I can set the pieces up for and fall apart in that. But when you're in that survival mode of, I need to provide for myself, I need these bills to get paid, your body's protecting you by not completely falling apart.
Right.
So what I would say with that is, the body's doing her good job at keeping that away, and it is going to come up. So maybe that's 2 weeks later.
Right.
Maybe that's 3 months later. Maybe that's a year later. But anything stored in the body that is wanting to come out and isn't able to right then, it is going to either continue rooting down and coming out in different symptoms, or there is going to be a bigger break.
Right.
And that's natural. We want to get to that point because it's healthy.
Definitely.
And as business owners, when things happen and it's like, I just went through something huge and now I need to show up and be a real human. I need to do normal people things.
Right.
We can do the normal people things, and you can even schedule. This sounds silly, but we're calendar girlies.
We are
If you're a calendar girly, here's something that's helpful. You can block in, let's say Wednesday night, I'm going to put 3 hours in my calendar, and that time is completely reserved for me having no obligations, no phone. I get to process, I get to be however I need to be. If that means I'm going to watch Netflix and eat ice cream and kind of numb out, that's what I'm going to do. if that means I need to cry, if that means I want to like go find someone who I love and ask to be held by them, that's what I'm
Mhm.
going to do. But then you can kind of switch gears from being in CEO mode
Yeah.
to being in
Human.
I just went through some really big shit mode. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So like kind of on the other side of that, I've witnessed people who I care about in my life like go through traumatic experiences, and they are so focused on I need to process this right here and now that they, I think, unconsciously sabotage their responsibilities, end up in a very poor financial situation because they're constantly in this emotional state processing. Where does that come from?
So the lens of this that I like to look at is when we're thinking parent mind,
Mm-hmm.
or more of our adult consciousness that's intellectually aware that I need to pay my bills, I need to feed myself, I need a safe place to live, is quieter than the child part of the nervous system, which, when a child is emotional about something, they're not like, if you look at a 3-year-old and they're feeling a big feeling, they're not like, oh, I'm gonna wait until after I eat my snack to cry. They're not. That's not how children process.
Right.
Usually, I don't know everything. Some 3-year-olds could be out here waiting to cry until after they eat breakfast, but they feel on the spot.
Right.
And so when we see that in maybe business owners or just humans we know who maybe neglect their responsibilities because they're so deep in feeling states, again, that's not right or wrong. That's what the body's going to do. And that comes from the child part of expression being louder or having more domain in the body than the adult consciousness.
Yeah.
And there's danger or wounds that come with either being more prominent. So for those of us who have a higher adult consciousness, like domination in our nervous system, that's where we can get to the point where it's like, okay, I never feel my feel. I just keep pushing it down and down. I keep myself occupied with work. I cope by doing more. I cope by distracting myself. Then we see big symptoms come up, or we get sick more, or our body starts to take on new patterns that aren't healthy. That is a wound of the like masculine primary part of the nervous system. And then we also see the wounds when it's the feminine dominant or the child consciousness in the body, which comes out in, I just need to put everything down and I need to feel, and I have calls today, but I need to cancel them all because I'm just feeling really overwhelmed, or, so there can be balance found, but that's why we sometimes see people who are more prone to just set everything down to feel their feelings or process or kind of linger in the process, because that child part either maybe in childhood didn't have enough room to express or got so comfortable expressing that their nervous system is still learning how to balance, as we all are.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong. We're all like, the child and parent part of us is always kind of like, no, I want to go. No, I want to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Switching turns.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So how do you think this comes up within the business world? As someone who's in the online business world, and you also, help me with a lot of my business, like you have seen the online business world from that somatic lens. Like, how does this kind of a dynamic, either the parent being more dominant or the child being more dominant?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think especially as a woman, I think that's an important note here to make too, is we have cycles, Many of us have menstrual cycles, and that can bring up a different part.
So true.
During different times of the month, it can shift. You can be more in your masculine energy. Both of us have a lot of that, like, we have our calendars. We want to get things done. We want our systems.
Structured.
We love, and that doesn't mean that we don't have flowy parts, but at this point in both of our lives, there is that love of structure. But that doesn't mean that at different points in our cycle, or let's say you're bleeding, or you have chronic illness, or you have an autoimmune disease, or many of these things that many of us experience, it doesn't mean that a different part of you isn't going to be dominant at a different point in the month. I would say that in my own nervous system, I see that I lead with the adult energy. Like, I want things to get done, I want things to get taken care of, but there's distractions. So that means that I can be focusing on things that aren't actually moving the needle in my business.
Right.
And that's something we can get swayed with when, as business owners in general,
Mhm.
regardless of which one you lean toward, like
Yeah.
more expressive or more productive,
Mm.
we can get distracted by different things.
Right.
So I've seen this show up in a business sense as if you're more of a productive system, the distractions can look like adding more things to your plate or thinking that you need to check more things off the list before you can sell or serve.
Mm.
And then in the expressive dominant, that in business, the distractions can look like thinking that you need to rest more in order to be creative, or thinking that you need less structure in order to really tap into your expertise, which is something I think we see a lot in social media.
Yeah.
Of like a lot of this really free flowy energy and wanting there to be space to really be creative and only create when we're inspired.
Mhm.
And that's something that I love that you talk about, is structuring our creation and putting our ideas somewhere so that when we aren't feeling inspired or we aren't feeling motivated, we still have things to move on.
Yeah.
Because there's going to be points, there's going to be days as humans when you're not feeling productive, dominant.
Yeah.
You're feeling kind of like, I just want to wait till I'm inspired. And that's not wrong.
Right.
But sometimes it can be a distraction. So I think the way that I see it is through that somatic lens, we just get distracted in unique ways, which means we also get to serve in unique ways. But primarily, I think if you're more expressive or productive, we just have different ways of staying off task.
Right. That's a
no
really,
shame in that game.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because there's so many different ways that we can subconsciously distract ourselves with business, and that is absolutely what I've seen through my experience too. Like, it's either you're trying to do too much that's like unnecessary, right? Like you're adding like unnecessary logistical things to your plate to do and figure out. Like, I see a lot of people do that with building a website. Like, I have to build a fully functional, high quality website before I can start serving clients, before I can put anything out there. I have to have this website. And it's just, you literally don't. And that is so often a belief that holds people back from like a very productive sense. But then I've also seen very much, especially with healers, and like you said, this isn't a bad thing, it's just different, where it's like, oh, I don't want to work too much because then I'll burn myself out, and I need to rest to be productive. And that's true. And that's the thing that makes it so tough sometimes when you're in it, to have that discernment, because it is true. You do need to rest to have the space to even create.
And also you need to rest as a human.
And like for your body, like for your
please, everyone,
mental health, and that's a huge thing that's a huge reason why I try to incorporate somatics and mindset work and parts work and things like that into the business realm. Because when you're a business owner, your internal world, your subconscious, the parts within you, the protectors, the parent, the child, they're all here running the show with you. And so if you're not familiar with those parts of yourself, if you're not familiar or have the resources to work with that, it's not impossible to run a successful business without that awareness. But I believe it makes it a lot more challenging when you don't have those tools, because things are not going to work and you're not going to understand why. You can't quantify like self-sabotage. Like
we should make a proper chart and a scale.
Like
so
you can look at a strategy and you can look at KPIs and you can understand, okay, people are dropping off at this point and they're not converting, so it's the landing page, right? You can quantify that. But when you are doing everything right and you get on the sales calls and you're not making sales, like there's some level where you can review your sales calls and you can quantify it, right? But so often I see that a lot of the things that hold people back in their sales process is simply their child is coming out in the sales process.
Yeah.
And people fawn or people freeze because when you're raised in a way where you were never allowed to ask for anything, you were only giving and never receiving, you were taking care of your family or anything like that, then you're going to get on the sales call and feel completely blocked off from being able to ask for what you want, to ask for what you're worth,
Yeah.
and to even receive that in the first place. So being able to understand, and it's not even about understanding fully, it's about feeling, it's about being with, it's about
Awareness,
witnessing, it's
yeah.
about having awareness, recognition, acknowledgement of these parts of yourself. It's not just beneficial for your mental and emotional health, your relationships outside of your business, but I think it's essential for running a business.
For sure. And I think that's really a necessary part of the work that you're compiling, is approaching business from a standpoint that isn't just systems and logistics, because we could talk about that every day, all day for 12 years, and there's still going to be those parts of us that, if not addressed or we don't bring our awareness to them, they're at play. Sometimes it's like, okay, when I'm my own boss, when I'm the person in charge, who's driving the car? When we go to a different place to work and you don't really have to think about it that much, it can be a lot easier to just, you're there. Like you said, you go. You know what's expected of you, you do it, you get paid and you leave. But when you are the one setting all that up, it's like, okay, all of my parts are here with me. Which one right now, which ones are kind of selecting the direction? And if we're just talking about strategy or sales or logistics without bringing those more holistic, well-rounded pieces in, it can sometimes be, we can only go so far,
right,
without bringing in that subconscious, energetic, embodied aspect.
Right. And it's not just energetics. It's not
for sure.
just that. And I think similar to what we were talking about, it's either the parent comes out or the child's coming out. I think sometimes when people are in that child state, they will focus only on the energetic part of running a business. And it might work for them to some extent, right? Like when you're in such a state of trust, people will come to you. You can magnetize opportunities, especially if you're a manifesting generator, right? That can work. But it's not necessarily, I don't see it as being sustainable when you don't have systems in place along with that level of trust and inner work. And so that's why we focus so much on bringing both the pieces together. Like we talk a lot about systems and strategy and KPIs and email marketing and all these different ways to do things. But I'm always asking people, like, how does that feel for you? And if there's resistance, what part is protecting you from moving forward? Is it genuinely not in alignment with your values and the way that your energy wants to work in this space? Or is it a child part that's fearful of what is going to happen when you have success, because you know that the plan is here, right? It's inevitable you'll be successful. And so many people subconsciously, I think, hold themselves back because they either don't have the resources, the awareness, or the tools to do that inner work, or don't have the resources or tools to do the strategy. So often people come to me and they're like, I need to understand how to write a good email, or like how to even organize myself, because right, we can operate on this system of like, I'm going to post content whenever I feel like it, and that can work, but it might take a lot longer.
What if you never feel
and
like
what
it?
if you never feel like it? Right. So I'm curious, what's your perspective on motivation?
One, I wanted to say really quick that I think that's why it's so important to be in a space where you're being asked those questions. Because when we don't have a coach or we don't have a community and we're just kind of running our business by ourselves and figuring it out, you don't have someone asking you, how does that feel for you? Or what part are you what are you trying to protect in, just having that mirror, that reflection is really powerful. And in terms of motivation, that's why I said, what if you never feel like it? Because half the time when I'm posting content, do I really feel like doing it? No. I mean, I love it. I love creating things for social media, and I feel lit up in the creativity aspect of that. But some people don't. And when your business is reliant on being online or social media, that is something to consider of. I'm not always going to feel motivated, but I can bring an element of discipline. I really feel like motivation is powerful when it's powerful, but it's not always present.
Right.
And there is a way that we can healthily approach the things that we do as business owners that we may not always feel like doing or want to do. Half the time when I'm showing up on social media, do I really want to be posting? Do I really want to sit down and batch create all that content? Maybe not. Maybe there's other things I'd like to be
Like
doing.
you might want to be at the beach or like just
Hanging
making
out,
art for
or
just because.
yeah, reading. I love to read. Like
Right.
there's other things that of course I would sometimes maybe prefer to be doing.
Right.
But as a business owner, I do understand that it is part of what I need to do to provide for myself and also serve, to stay consistent and let people know I'm open for business and I'm available to be showing up and doing what I say I'm going to do. And every time that I follow through and I do what I say I'm going to do, my body learns that it's safe to trust myself. There's so many times as children or in relationships and partnership and friendships, when, or even maybe in a coaching relationship, maybe you hired someone and they made all these big promises. They said that, or maybe even just a logistical standpoint, like you'll have access to me these days a week. You're going to have access to these calls. We're going to go over these things. And you kind of didn't get what you paid for. Or in a relationship, you love someone and they say they're going to do something and they don't do it. And you feel abandoned or dropped in your childhood and relationships or in a professional standpoint. Our body closes off and kind of can go into a fight mode where we're like, I'm the only one who's going to protect myself. No one follows through with their word. And we can also apply that to ourselves a lot of the time. So in every moment where I practice discipline, even when I don't want to, when I say that I'm going to make myself a meal and sit down and eat it without being on my phone to give my eyes a break and my brain a break, I build trust. When I really just want to be at the beach, or I really just want to take a nap in the middle of the day, which I definitely do, especially when I'm bleeding. I'm not saying any of these things are bad, but I'm not going to do it instead of the things that I said I'm going to do, because every single time I post, when I say I'm going to post, every time I hop on a call, even when I'm feeling kind of like tired, or maybe I could reschedule it until next week, I build trust. And motivation is cool, but I also feel like it's kind of a myth that we can get addicted to. Of like, oh, I need more motivation. I need more inspiration. I need more. We don't really need motivation. We need momentum.
Yeah.
Which is built in those tiny disciplined moments of, okay, I don't want to post, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to do it. And I did it. Like I'm taking those steps toward what I need to be doing.
Yeah. That's so important. And I love how you were saying when you show up in that discipline and you show up for yourself in the ways that you've committed to, you're building trust with yourself. And as business owners, like that is so incredibly important, because if you don't trust yourself, if you feel mistrust, then you're not going to show up for yourself. You're not going to show up for your business. You're going to have a hard time showing up for your clients, even going to have a hard time even closing sales, because if you don't trust yourself enough to follow through on the things you've promised to yourself, how can you trust yourself to follow through on the things you're promising other people? And that happens so often in the coaching community. And I think it's a huge reason why business coaching has kind of gotten a bad name over the past couple of years, because a lot of people are not doing the inner work and they're promising certain things. And then, and I'll be the first one to recognize it's a lot to juggle, being a
Yeah.
business coach. It's a lot, can be a lot to juggle. So I have compassion, and I recognize that a lot of people have been burnt by that, and that damages trust. But being able to show up for ourselves in that way is the first step. And it's not relying on motivation. That's not how we're going to get there. It is doing the things that we don't necessarily want to do. Like,
Yeah.
as a business owner, there's so many things that we don't want to do. If
Yeah.
you're not tech savvy, you're not going to want to build a landing page. You're not going to want to set up automations. You're not going to want to do any of that. But
And if you don't like being on camera or being super in your flowy expressive side, you're probably not going to want to record that video or
right,
make content with your face in it or write the things that need written. Yeah, it goes both ways.
but with anything, the more you do it, the more you practice, the better you're going to get, the easier it's going to get. And that takes discipline. I actually had a coach who taught me that in the past. And she said, you know, in Turkish, the word for discipline literally has the same meaning as self-trust. Like, you cannot have self-trust without discipline.
Yeah.
And it's hard when the kid is running the show.
Absolutely. It can feel like a threat.
Right.
Discipline can feel like a threat to a nervous system that wants to be free flowing and really expressive and make art all day and be in nature. And those are superhuman things that we want. The pull to nature and to creativity are supernatural. And when discipline comes in, it can feel like a sharp, it can feel kind of like a pressure. And when we don't want to feel, when we want to feel regulated and calm, we sometimes push away pressure. But there's really healthy pressure. And that's why a lot of the time I'm working with clients not on regulation specifically, but capacity. I don't really feel like I'm in the business of doing nervous system regulation work because so much of my work is focused on capacity. How can we bring in the ability to safely hold the pressure, to safely hold all of our parts that carry different energies and doesn't always feel regulated. My passion doesn't feel regulated. My joy is dysregulating. Pleasure in the body is dysregulating. And those things are good. We like feeling in pleasure. We like joy. We like that feeling when you've just done a really good workout or had a good dance and your heart rate is raised and you're, sweating a bit. That is dysregulation. Your body's thrown off of its natural state for a moment, but it's not bad, which is why when we're so focused on trying to be regulated, we can sometimes miss the beauty and the humanness of being dysregulated, which comes when that child sees discipline coming close and we're like, oh, I need to be regulated. Oh, I need to be calm, which means I can't do things that feel forceful or I can't do things that feel like they carry a pressure. And it's like, no, how can I strengthen my capacity to bring health to the pressure?
Right.
How can I see this as good? How can I see discipline as something that moves the needle and not something that takes my freedom from me? Because I feel like we fear that a lot of like, oh my God, I need to be disciplined and have a calendar, have a big schedule. And all of a sudden it's like, I can never live my own life again.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I love that perspective. It's just a matter of how we choose to look at it. I've been hearing more about this, like from other people too. I've been seeing more people talking about how stress is really important. Like, let's change the story around, if you're experiencing stress, you need to eliminate stressors. You need to cut things out of your life that are causing stress, because we are literally designed to feel and handle stress.
And also in our survival, like evolutionarily, having stress is important for our ability to survive, to have the motivation, to have the primal instinct to keep living. We need some amount of stress in a healthy way from our environment.
Right. Yeah, and something interesting I learned recently is that yes, our bodies are designed to feel stress and experience stress, but when you're dealing with chronic illness, when you're dealing with hormone imbalance and things like that, your body has a much harder time handling that stress. And so it's not a matter of eliminating stressors in your life, it's a matter of healing the body from the inside out metabolically, so that you can handle stress. And I think a huge part of that is being able to work with somatics. And I think when you are holding so much in your body all the time, it's going to be harder to take in any other stress because you don't know how to let it go, depending on what you've gone through, how you've been raised, how you've learned to process things. And I'm just excited about this conversation because it feels a lot more abundant to think about, you know, my body is literally designed to handle stress, and it's not a matter of eliminating things from my life with like a scarcity perspective, but more so how can I train my body to be more receptive
and
resilient.
The more resource we have, the more safe and quote regulated we're going to feel when we're experiencing stress. So rather than feeling like we need to be super regulated all the time or motivated all the time, when we just give ourselves more resources structurally, systematically, and also physically, and for illness and in our mindset and in our embodiment, we have more resource to navigate that with ease.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's like having the vessel for the water. Like you've got to have a cup to put your water in so you can drink it. You've got to have structure, the resources, the structure to hold the emotional body, to hold the water body that exists like within all this. So powerful.
So powerful.
Wow. Okay, I feel like we could literally talk for like 5 hours straight about all of this, but we're gonna wrap it up there. Oh my god, and we are ghosts
in
because
the sun zone
is so bright. Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It was such a pleasure. My very first guest.
Yay. I'm sure we'll continue talking for hours other times about this.
Yes, I'd love to have you on again, because there's definitely more depth in everything we were talking about and things we didn't even cover. Oh my goodness. But I'm so grateful for your time and energy and your insight. And I'm curious, how can our lovely viewers / listeners find you and your work?
Yay. So first way is on Instagram. My handle is Ken and Co Healing, which is KENANDCO, and the word healing. And then my website is the same. And send me a DM, visit my website. You can find my email there. And thank you so much for having me on. This was such a sweet conversation.
And do you have any currently any free resources that people can check out if they really resonated with you and want to check out what it would be like to learn from you?
Yeah, for sure. So the first free resource is a mini training and somatic practice called Intimate, which is where I actually teach how to create a safe container to fall apart in. So if you were curious about that, you can find that on my website under the Work With Me page. And then there's also a few free other options on that page of other ways to work with me.
Awesome, cool. And we'll put all of those resources and links in the show notes down below so you guys can check out Kennedy's work, which I highly recommend. She's amazing.
Don't forget to rate, like, and share with all your friends and subscribe so